Hello everyone, and welcome back to Military News. People spend night on roofs and in trees after Ukraine dam breach. As we've been reporting, thousands of people are being evacuated from southern Ukraine's Kherson region after a major dam in the town of Nova Kakhovka was breached yesterday morning. Hanna Zarudnia, 65, was one of those evacuated from the village of Antonivka, which is just north of the banks of the river Dnipro. Our local school and stadium downtown were flooded. The stadium was completely underwater and the floodwaters were reaching the school, she told Reuters. The road was completely flooded, the bus was stuck. Only one elevated point could be reached by the bus, and this is where we were taken from. Sunak says intentional attack on dam would be new low. Chris Mason, political editor, UK Prime Minister Rishi Sunak has said if it is proven the dam was breached intentionally, it would represent a new low in Russian aggression. Sunak made the remarks on his way to Washington, in which he will discuss the war in Ukraine with US President Joe Biden. The PM told us the UK's military and intelligence agencies were looking into what had happened, and so it was too soon to preempt that and make a definitive judgment. But, he added, if it was intentional, it would represent the largest attack on civilian infrastructure in Ukraine since the start of the war, and demonstrate the new lows that we would have seen from Russian aggression. Such attacks, he said, were appalling and wrong. More floods likely as dam deteriorates. UK Defence Ministry. The remaining structure of the Kakhovka Dam is likely to deteriorate further over the next few days, the UK's Ministry of Defence has said. The MOD says the dam partially failed shortly before 3 o'clock local time on Tuesday, and the entire eastern portion of the structure was swept away by midday. It also says the water level in the Kakhovka reservoir was at a record high shortly before the breach, which led to a particularly high volume of water inundating the area downstream. But the MOD also says the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant is highly unlikely to face immediate safety issues over the dropping water levels in the reservoir. Hundreds of thousands of people without drinking water. Zelensky. Hundreds of thousands of people have been left without access to normal drinking water since the breach of the Kakhovka Dam, Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky has said. He said at least tens of thousands of people are still stranded in the area. Writing on Telegram this morning, he said, our services, all those who can help people, are already involved. But we can only help on the territory controlled by Ukraine. On the part occupied by Russia, the occupiers are not even trying to help people. Zelensky condemned the dam attack by saying that it was carried out by Russian forces and was absolutely deliberate. Russian terrorists have once again proved that they are a threat to everything living, he added. Kiev and Moscow have accused each other of the dam's breach, and the claims by the warring sides have not been verified by the BBC. Before and after images show extent of flooding. The image above shows the village of Kherson, about 8 miles 13 kilometers from the dam. The before image reveals the normal width of the Dnipro River, whereas the after image shows heavy flooding by 9:21 British summertime yesterday. A terminal used to store grain can be seen in the above satellite image. In the after image, a few silos still remain visible by 9:07 British summertime yesterday despite the heavy flooding. Finally, this image shows the Kakhovka Dam before and after the breach. Sleeping on roofs and sitting in trees, waiting to be rescued, more than 24 hours on, and the consequences of the dam's breach are still playing out, even as the vast Kakhovka reservoir continues to empty, sending floodwaters surging down towards the Black Sea. Satellite images show massive flooding on both sides of the Dnipro River, especially in low-lying terrain to the south, in territory still controlled by Russia. In some communities, floodwaters were so high that people were forced to spend the night on their roofs and sitting in trees, waiting to be rescued. In Kherson, the only major city affected, the flooding is equally acute, with some neighborhoods close to the river now basically underwater. Rescue operations continue, hampered by frequent shelling from Russian positions across the river. The circumstances surrounding the dam's collapse are still the subject of claim and counterclaim, but it was surely no accident that it happened just a day after Ukraine's long-anticipated counter-offensive appeared to get underway. From a strictly military point of view, there's a kind of brutal logic to what happened yesterday. Fearing Ukrainian attacks at any point along a 600-mile front line, it seems likely that Russian commanders decided to remove the only viable crossing point over the Dnipro south of the city of Zaporizhzhia. Dam breach not immediate threat to nuclear power plant. We can bring you more comments now from the head of the International Atomic Energy Agency, IAEA, who has been discussing the damage caused to the Kakhovka Dam. Rafael Grossi said this morning that the breach poses no short-term risk to the nearby Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant, which is currently controlled by the Russian military. But he also said the situation was making an already very difficult and unpredictable nuclear safety and security situation even worse. The dam's reservoir provides water used for the essential cooling of the 6 reactors at Europe's biggest nuclear power plant. Grossi made it clear there were a number of alternative sources of water, including a large cooling pond next to the site that is designed to remain above the height of the reservoir, adding it was vitally important that this source of water remained intact. Why the Kakhovka Dam is important: it's not yet clear what caused the damage to the Kakhovka Dam, which is a very important resource and serves a number of purposes. It holds back a vast reservoir that supplies water to a host of communities upstream, with farmers known to rely on the water to grow their crops. The breach could impact tens of thousands of people if it recedes far enough. The dam also provides cooling water to the nuclear power station at Zaporizhia, around 100 miles, 161 kilometers upstream, which is under Russian control and relies on the reservoir. The head of the International Atomic Energy Agency, IAEA, said this morning the damage poses no short-term risk to Zaporizhia, but it was exacerbating an already very difficult and unpredictable nuclear safety and security situation.
Вони хочуть знищити українську націю і Україну теж. А якими шляхами їх це не керуєш, тому що вони, для них нічого святого немає.
Що ви на це думаєте? Чи вийде?
Нічого в них не вийде. Якщо в них не вийшло, я зразу з першого дня війни, я сказав, тут у нас були сусіди, що кричали, що все буде добре. Я сказав, що все одно перемога буде за нами. Яким шляхом, якими втратами, все одно перемога буде за нами.
Watch, reservoir waters surge through breached dam. Drone footage, taken shortly after the Kakhovka Dam was breached yesterday morning, shows the scale of the torrent of water flooding the southern Ukrainian region of Kherson over the last 24 hours. Thousands of people have been evacuated from settlements along the banks of Dnipro River, which were hit by rising water levels. What Ukraine and Russia have said: the two countries have blamed each other for the dam breach. Ukraine swiftly accused Moscow, with President Volodymyr Zelensky saying the dam was mined by Russian occupiers who blew it up. He said Russian forces, who've had control of the region since last year, likely blew the infrastructure up from inside the plant. Moscow's messaging around the breach was more confused, as our Russia editor Steve Rosenberg explains here. Eventually, though, the Kremlin settled on an official version of events that Ukrainian forces struck the dam in a deliberate act of sabotage, as described by Russian President Vladimir Putin's spokesman, Dmitry Peskov. This war has been filled with claims and counterclaims made by Ukraine and Russia, and it's still difficult for organizations like the BBC to verify either side's version of events.